Well, we have, of course, in Donald Trump fashion, LA riots. I don't know if you guys have, followed that at all, y'all, but it's a mess out there in LA. This really don't make a whole bunch of sense, but this is what we're up against.
You're looking at some of the many scenes, just some of the many scenes. Parts of Los Angeles were a mess over the weekend. You've got immigration raids setting off 3 days of often violent protests that escalated into riots. So good morning, everybody. On a Monday, we'll see where we are now. Hope you enjoyed the weekend. Back into the week we go. I'm Bill Hemmer live in New York. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. It feels like there's sort of friction happening everywhere, especially in Los Angeles. They are reeling from day 3 of chaos. Anti-ICE agitators fighting with police, some of them waving foreign flags. And we've seen people hurling rocks and bottles at police cars, some even smashing windows at the LAPD headquarters.
So, Dana, the rioters are also torching a row of Waymo driverless taxis that are in use in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, police forced to shut down the 101 freeway after protesters ground traffic to a halt. President Trump deploying thousands of National Guard troops and saying the federal response could escalate from here.
What's the bar for sending Marines?
The bar is what I think it is. I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order.
Sending active Marines on the table, sir. Secretary Hegseth.
We're going to see what we need. We'll send whatever we need to make sure there's law and order.
So now Team Fox coverage. Kayleigh McEnany has analysis. Rich Edson reports at the White House, first to L.A. on the ground. Jonathan Hunt leads our coverage on this Monday. Jonathan, where are we now? Hello.
Good morning to you, Bill. We are still in what is a very tense situation in downtown Los Angeles. You can see one of dozens of police roadblocks that have been set up in the area behind me here. That is because we are right outside the Metropolitan Detention Center. That is where the protesters believe some of the immigrants caught up in the raids over the last few days are still being held. And let me bring you over here, Bill. This is the 101 freeway you were just mentioning, and this is the exact spot that was shut down in both directions yesterday when thousands of protesters showed up in downtown LA, and hundreds of them made their way onto this freeway. That is where we also saw several California Highway Patrol vehicles set on fire by the protesters as they continued to battle with law enforcement, who returned with tear gas, in some cases rubber bullets. It has been a very intense 3 days throughout here, and the LAPD chief, Jim McDonnell, at one point essentially admitted during a news conference last night that the LAPD on its own could not cope. Listen here to the police chief.
We are overwhelmed as far as the number of people out there engaged in this type of activity and the type of things that they're doing. They'll take backpacks, and the backpack will have a cinder block in it. They have a hammer, and they'll break up the cinder block and use that, pass it around to throw at officers. There's no limit to what they're doing to our officers.
Now, LA Mayor Karen Bass also held a news conference during the height of last night's riots. She condemned pretty unequivocally all acts of violence, but at the same time, she said that the violence, in her view, was to some extent sparked by the presence of the National Guard. Here's the mayor.
I was hoping to prevent this situation from happening. I was trying to encourage the administration that if they deployed the National Guard in Los Angeles, it would create a sense of chaos. It's the last thing our city needs.
Now, Bill and Dana, going back to the police chief, his press conference was particularly interesting. I was on air hosting Fox News at Night Friday night when this all began to unfold. And as we showed our viewers and I watched the live pictures coming in, it struck me, where is the LAPD? They were certainly slow to deploy. Now, the police chief said in that news conference they had to get organized, but at the same time, he also said they do not want law enforcement to be politicized, and he seemed to be at pains in that press conference to say the LAPD is no part of the ICE actions. So it seems fair to question, as many at the White House have, whether the LAPD was slow to get involved initially because of the tinderbox of a political situation we have here. And it remains tense today. As I said, another protest due to gather at around 11 a.m. here in downtown LA. National Guard is on the streets, hundreds of them we have seen today, and these police roadblocks all over downtown LA. So the tinderbox is ready to be lit once again today, Bill and Dana.
Okay, a couple things. Let's go through it together, Jonathan. There were reports over the weekend that there was a 2-hour delay on behalf of the LAPD. Now, the police department came out and said that was not the case. There was one incident where they were 37 minutes delayed because of traffic and a number of other factors. I don't know how in the end we run that story down. The place where you are, is that where ICE would take those that they've apprehended who are in the country illegally?
It's one of the places that they might take some of those that they have arrested over the last few days. You know, ICE is not telling us where they have taken all of those that they have arrested, Bill. And to go back to the police chief again and the role of the LAPD, again, I watched it Friday night. It did seem to me they were very, very slow indeed. I did not count the minutes. I couldn't tell you whether it was 2 hours, an hour and 9 minutes, an hour and 39 minutes. But it did seem that they did not get out on the streets of LA to do what was needed to be done to enforce the law, to keep the peace as quickly as they might have. What the organizational difficulties in doing that were, that's not for me to say. I'm not a law enforcement expert. The police chief said that it's simply a case of getting organized. He said if they send 1 or 2 squad cars, they could get surrounded. That becomes a much more dangerous situation. But there's certainly legitimate questions to be asked of those who are able to answer them as to where the LAPD was in the early going on this. I have to say, over the last 48 hours, they have certainly made their presence felt. And as you can see behind me here, this is just one of many roadblocks, Bill. And just to give you an idea of the tension in the air here, we came into downtown around 3 a.m. this morning, Bill. We approached one of these police roadblocks just around the corner from us here. We're near the City Hall area, so this is the heart of everything. And as we approached that roadblock in our vehicle with one of our security guys showing his law enforcement badge, we were fired on with a flashbang grenade. They landed it just a couple of yards in front of our vehicle. These guys were not playing around this morning. Everybody very tense. The simple answer to us approaching that roadblock was, don't even dare. Get back. That's how tense the situation is in LA today, Bill and Dana.
So, Jonathan, that's my question, which is, what do you expect today or even into tonight? Do you think it keeps going, or does it pull back a little bit?
Yeah, it's an awful thing to do, to predict more riots, more violence, but it's hard to see anybody backing down at this point, Dana. The protesters have another gathering called for beginning at 11 a.m. That's 2 p.m. Eastern today. That's in Grand Park, just a couple of blocks from where we are right now. I can tell you that behind me, behind those police vehicles you see, earlier today there was a line of National Guard protecting the Metropolitan Detention Center here. They've withdrawn for now because there is obviously no immediate threat at 6:09 in the morning. That threat will be perceived at the very least once protesters start gathering just a couple of blocks from here around 11 a.m. So the National Guard will be back on the streets, hundreds of them. There are hundreds more, up to 2,000 available at a moment's notice if necessary. So, yeah, it's going to remain a tense situation. I hate to predict violence, hate to predict riots, of course. You hope that peace will prevail. The protesters will remain peaceful, but it's a difficult situation. Both sides are ready for conflict. That is a certain thing to say, Dana.
All right, Jonathan, thank you.
Yeah, good work out there, Jonathan. Back to L.A. with the sun up now momentarily. Rich Edson's got the Democratic response from leaders in and out of the state, and also what's expected from the president, who we should see probably in about 20 minutes, live from the White House now. And Rich, what's happening there?
Hey, good morning, Bill. Well, Democrats in California, across the country, are saying that President Trump are accusing him of an alarming abuse of power. California Governor Gavin Newsom says that President Trump is acting like a dictator and has illegally commandeered his state's National Guard. He posted on X a letter that he says he sent to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, formally requesting the administration rescind the troop deployment and that, quote, "We didn't have a problem until Trump got involved. This is a serious breach of state sovereignty, inflaming tensions while pulling resources from where they're actually needed. Rescind the order. Return control to California." Yesterday, the president responded to questions on whether he plans on using the Insurrection Act.
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden and his auto pen.
California Democratic Representative Norma Torres posted a video demanding that ICE get the heck out of L.A. so that order can be restored. In a statement, former vice president and Los Angeles resident Kamala Harris said, quote, "This administration's actions are not about public safety. They're about stoking fear. As the LAPD mayor and governor have noted, demonstrations in defense of our immigrant neighbors have been overwhelmingly peaceful." Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton responded, quote, "No surprise, the most incompetent vice president in history stands with the illegal alien rioters." President Trump is due back here at the White House a little later this morning. We'll see if he has anything to say about what he has heard from these officials.
Okay, you got it, Rich. Thanks. Nice to see you there. North Lawn, back to you as we get more news. Thank you, Rich.
It's a Monday, and Kayleigh McEnany joins us. Great to have you here as this breaking news is happening. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, had some tough words yesterday on MSNBC. Let's watch.
Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough guy. You know, I don't give a damn. But I care about my community. I care about this community. The hell are they doing? These guys need to grow up. They need to stop. And we need to push back. And I'm sorry to be so clear, but that kind of bloviating is exhausting. So, Tom, arrest me.
So the Tom he is talking, the Tom he is talking about is Tom Homan. And Tom Homan was on Fox and Friends this morning. Listen here.
But when you cross that line, you put hands on an ICE officer or you destroy property, or I say that you're impede law enforcement, or you're knowingly harboring concealing illegal alien, that's a crime. And the Trump administration is not going to tolerate it. You cross that line, we're going to seek prosecution in the Department of Justice. Then the reporter asked me, well, could Governor Newsom or Mayor Bass be arrested? I said, well, no one's above the law.
Kayleigh McEnany, your thoughts this morning?
No one is above the law. We see that with Judge Hannah Dugan, who's being prosecuted for aiding and abetting these illegal immigrants and obstructing an official proceeding. Look, President Trump, I was there as press secretary during the summer of 2020, during the riots. I've had many, many discussions with him about his views of the National Guard, about the military. President Trump really views this as an escalatory ladder. He expects the states to patrol their streets as the 10th Amendment calls for. They have the police power. He's not hesitant to use the National Guard when needed. He used it in D.C. when St. John's Church was burning. He says, if you don't act, I will. And then the military is a last resort, and he has that power under the Insurrection Act. But we saw very clearly during my tenure what happens when you don't act. We saw that in Minnesota. We saw that on May 27th when a Target burned, when other stores burned. The police chief in Minnesota said, hey, we need the National Guard. Tim Walz made the decision to deploy the National Guard on a limited basis to protect the state capitol complex. And guess what happened that night? The 3rd precinct burned. Yeah. So every hour counts. Every minute counts. Gavin Newsom has delayed in this matter, and President Trump is saying, I'm not going to delay.
So on that point, he told voters in Iowa this. This is 2023 now. He told Iowa voters that he was prevented from using the military to suppress violence in cities and states during his first term. He said if the issue came up again, that he is, quote, not waiting. And then you've got these Democratic leaders. They're drawing their lines in the sand. It's, we're against Trump, and Trump's the problem here, and here's how it went.
A lot of these peaceful protests are being generated because the President of the United States is sowing chaos and confusion.
It was peaceful, and of course, you escalate the situation. Now you're talking about bringing in the National Guard to militarize the situation. It's going to get worse. It's unnecessary again.
We do not need to see our city torn apart. And the idea that the federal government that should be assisting us is a contributing factor, I think is very tragic.
Oh, I want you to react to all that. Roll this video too. A lot of foreign flags, a lot of Mexican flags, and we don't know if they're from Mexico. We don't know if they're illegals who are here, or they're just agitators in the crowd trying to stoke the flames. In this case, literally.
Yeah, you know, as I watch those governors, I sit there and think the National Guard escalatory. I was privy to a governor's call where it was none other than General Milley, who's no friend with President Trump these days, talking about how studies show the National Guard in an overwhelming presence actually de-escalates. Mayor Karen Bass, I watched her last night say it's not unusual for a few people to engage in violence. That's not the baseline this country expects. It's not unusual for a few people to engage in violence is not what we should expect from our elected officials. And I would also note a word of caution to Democrats. In 2020, the underlying fact pattern of those riots.
Isn't that crazy that we're talking about underlying acts, criminal acts, when y'all have a president with 40 fucking felonies? He doesn't have one or two. He has a whole slew. He is the word criminal. If you look up criminal in the dictionary, you would see a picture of none other than Donald Dumb Trump.
So something Americans were very sympathetic to. People hated seeing that video of George Floyd. They were with many of the peaceful protesters. This is a different situation. Illegal immigration, the heart of the country, is very much with President Trump. The underlying fact pattern here.
Nobody is with President Trump except for the idiots that's just like him. Nobody wanted a felon president.
Is not one that's going to smile upon Democrats should they take the wrong side in this, the side of violent rioters.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I take away from this is about speed and not letting it get even more out of hand. Because what Jonathan Hunt just said is nobody wants to predict it. Everyone hopes it'll get better. But if officers are getting attacked, you have to stamp that out.
Yeah, when they're caught under a freeway, you have to stamp that out.
Caleb, we'll get more at noon when we see you then.
Kaylee is such an airhead. She is a blind airhead. What can we expect?